They excluded me on a family trip, stole 50K, and planned to make me disappear. So I exposed their dark secret. I can still feel the bite of the Colorado wind as I stepped into the Snow Pine Lodge, my boots echoing on the polished wood floor, my suitcase thumping against my leg. It was late afternoon, the kind of winter day where the sun barely crests the horizon before sinking behind the Rockies, leaving the world in a pale, icy glow. Outside, the mountains stretched endlessly under a thick quilt of snow, their peaks softened by the fading light, and the air carried the sharp scent of pine and wood smoke. For a fleeting moment, I let myself believe this trip, our 5th anniversary getaway, might finally weave me into Nathan's family. I'd spent years chasing that hope, picturing a day when his parents would see me as more than an outsider. But standing there, with the wind howling faintly beyond the tall windows, I had no idea how wrong I'd be, or how much darker this trip would turn. Nathan stood beside me, his sandy hair mussed from the drive, his hazel eyes darting toward the entrance, like he was waiting for a storm to roll in. "Mom and Dad are particular, you know that," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. I brushed it off, clinging to the warmth in my chest. "Yeah, but this place is stunning," I replied, forcing a smile. "The mountains, the air, it's like a dream." He nodded, but his silence felt heavy, a warning I didn't yet understand. The doors swung open, and Margaret and Douglas Pierce swept in, their presence chilling the room more than the wind ever could. Margaret, in her 60s, wore a fur-lined coat that screamed old money, her ice-blue eyes flicking over me with a smile that never reached them. Douglas, broad and weathered, trailed her, his scowl etched deep as he barked orders at no one in particular. "Oh, Ellie, you made it," Margaret said, her tone dripping with faint surprise, like I'd defied some unspoken odds. "I wasn't sure with that little car of yours. Nathan, darling, help your father with the bags." "I'm not hauling my own luggage in this damn weather," Douglas growled, ignoring me entirely as he scanned the empty lobby. "Where's the staff?" "I can help," I started, but Margaret waved me off with a flick of her manicured hand. "No need, dear. We've got it sorted. Why don't you freshen up? Dinner's soon." I nodded, swallowing the unease that coiled in my stomach, and slipped away to our suite. The lodge was breathtaking, polished wood floors, a roaring fireplace, the faint scent of cedar lingering in every corner. But as I unpacked, that unease grew, a shadow creeping beneath the luxury. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves. 5 years married, and I still felt like a guest in their world. That night, I walked into the dining room, expecting a family meal. The long wooden table glowed under candlelight, set for 5. Or so I thought. The waiter gestured to the seats, but Margaret pointed to a lone chair at the far end, separated from the main spread by an awkward stretch of polished floor. "That one's for her," she said coolly. "Ellie, isn't it? We like our family close-knit." I froze, my fork halfway to my plate. "Wait, I'm not sitting with you?" Douglas grunted, not looking up from his steak. "Tradition. Newcomers get the edge, builds character." I turned to Nathan, waiting for him to laugh it off, to pull me a chair beside him. "Ellie, it's just how they are," he mumbled, eyes on his plate. "Sit down, okay?" So I sat, the chair creaking under me, and watched them. Margaret chatting about their plans, Douglas nodding, Nathan laughing along. No one glanced my way. I picked at my food, the clink of my fork against the plate echoing in the silence around me. 5 years, I thought bitterly. 5 years married, and I'm still a newcomer. The exclusion didn't stop there. The next morning, I woke to an empty suite, Nathan's boots gone from the doorway. I'd pictured us skiing together, carving trails through the powder, laughing until our cheeks hurt. I pulled on my parka and called him, my breath fogging in the chill. "Nathan, where are you guys? I thought we were hitting the slopes." His voice crackled through the line, distracted. "Oh, Mom wanted an early start. We're at the lodge bar. Meet us later?" The call ended before I could argue. I trekked through the snow, my boots sinking deep, the wind biting at my face. When I reached the bar, I found them mid-celebration, Margaret sipping a glass of Pinot, Douglas puffing a cigar, Nathan grinning like a kid at Christmas. I stood there, my shadow stretching across the floor, and cleared my throat. "You didn't wait for me," I said, keeping my voice steady. Douglas didn't look up. "You're a big girl, Ellie. Should have kept up." "Sorry, babe," Nathan muttered, eyes on his drink. "Tomorrow, I promise." Tomorrow came, and the promise broke. They forgot to tell me about the snowmobile outing, the private dinner at the Peak, the spa afternoon Margaret raved about over breakfast. I'd find out through Instagram, smiling photos captioned "family time," and Nathan's excuses grew thinner each time. "Mom likes it this way," he'd say, shrugging like it was a law of nature I couldn't fight. I tried to hold on, to believe it was just a quirk I could outlast. I'd spent years bending for them, cooking meals they barely touched, nodding through Margaret's critiques of my small-town taste, staying quiet when Douglas dismissed my job as a graphic designer like it was a hobby. I told myself it was worth it because I loved Nathan. Back in Denver, when we'd met at a friend's barbecue, he'd been different, charming, attentive, the kind of guy who'd stay up late sketching silly cartoons with me. But somewhere along the way, that Nathan faded, swallowed by his parents' shadow. By the third day, I stopped trying to keep up. I wandered the lodge alone, sketching the mountains from the lobby windows, letting the silence settle around me. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Clara, Nathan's sister, the one I'd only met once at our wedding. She'd been a breath of fresh air then, all sharp wit and wild hair. But she'd vanished from family gatherings after a fight I never got the details on. "Heard you're stuck with the Vipers. Call me." Curious, I dialed, and her voice cut through the haze, warm, edged with a wry humor I hadn't realized I'd missed. "They're doing it again, aren't they? The separate table, the forgetting you exist? Again?" My heart thudded. "What do you mean?" "Nathan's ex, Sophie," Clara said, her tone darkening. "They froze her out on a trip to Aspen. Same playbook. She divorced him after they drained her savings for family investments. He never told you?" My mouth went dry. "No, investments? Check your joint account," she said. "Margaret's got a way of bleeding people dry." I fumbled with my phone, hands trembling as I logged into our banking app. My breath stopped. $50,000 gone, siphoned to an account labeled Pierce Ventures. My savings, my freelance earnings, the nest egg I'd built for us, stolen. I scrolled back, piecing it together. Small transfers over months, hidden under vague labels, all while I'd been too trusting to notice. Rage surged through me, hot and clarifying, burning away the last threads of doubt. They weren't just shutting me out, they were robbing me blind. But that wasn't the worst of it. As I dug deeper, I found something else. A series of emails between Nathan and Margaret, buried in a folder I'd never seen. They weren't just about money. One subject line caught my eye. "The cabin, keep her out." My stomach churned. What cabin? We hadn't planned any side trips. I opened the email, my hands shaking. "Nathan, make sure Ellie doesn't find out about the cabin. It's the last piece we need for the deal. If she gets in the way, we'll lose everything. Keep her distracted, same as last time." Last time? I thought of Sophie again, the ex I'd barely heard about. Nathan had always brushed her off as not a good fit, but now I wondered what he'd really done to her. And what was this cabin? I kept reading, my heart pounding as I pieced together fragments of a plan. Something about a land deal, a hidden property in the mountains, and a buyer waiting in Denver. They were using the trip as a cover, and I was the loose end they needed to tie up. I didn't sleep that night. I paced by the fireplace, the snow swirling outside like a mirror to the storm inside me. Every creak of the lodge, every gust against the windows, fueled my resolve. I thought about Sophie, Nathan's ex, a name I'd barely heard in passing. He'd told me they'd grown apart, a casual shrug of a story I'd never questioned. Now I wondered what else he'd buried, what else I'd been too naive to see. But I wasn't naive anymore. I started digging, using the lodge's spotty Wi-Fi to search for Pierce Ventures. What I found made my blood run cold. A string of lawsuits, fraud allegations, and a bankruptcy filing from a decade ago. Margaret and Douglas had a history of shady deals, and Nathan had been their willing accomplice, signing off on every transfer, every lie. They'd used Sophie's money to fund a failed real estate scheme, and now they were doing the same to me. But the cabin, that was new, a piece of the puzzle I didn't yet understand. I needed answers. I slipped out of the suite, the lodge eerily quiet at 2 a.m., and crept down to the lobby. The front desk was empty, but a map of the property hung on the wall, marked with trails and nearby cabins. One caught my eye, a small dot labeled Pine Hollow Cabin, tucked deep in the woods, a mile from the main lodge. My gut told me that was the place. I grabbed a flashlight from the lost and found bin, pulled on my coat, and headed into the night. The snow crunched under my boots, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The trail was narrow, winding through dense pines, and the cold bit at my face, but I kept going, driven by a mix of anger and fear. What were they hiding, and why did they need me out of the way? When I reached the cabin, it was smaller than I'd expected. A squat, weathered structure with boarded-up windows and a sagging roof. The door was locked, but the wood was rotted, and a hard shove broke it open. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the smell of mildew. Papers littered a rickety table, and I rifled through them, my flashlight shaking in my hand. Land deeds, survey maps, a contract with a Denver real estate firm. It was all there. They were selling this land, a multi-million-dollar deal. But the property wasn't in their name. It was in Sophie's. My heart sank as I read further. Sophie hadn't just left Nathan. She'd disappeared. The last document was a police report dated 3 years ago, filed by Sophie's sister. Missing person, last seen near Snowpine Lodge. A note scrawled in Margaret's handwriting was pinned to the report. She knew too much. Problem solved. I stumbled back, my breath hitching. They hadn't just stolen from Sophie. They'd done something to her. And now they were doing it to me. I stuffed the papers into my coat, my mind racing. I had to get out, but as I turned to leave, headlights cut through the darkness outside. A car was coming. I doused the flashlight and ducked behind a moldy couch, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. The car stopped, and I heard voices. Margaret's sharp tone, Douglas's gruff bark, and Nathan's quieter murmur. They were here. She's probably still asleep, Nathan said, his voice tense. She doesn't suspect anything. She'd better not, Margaret snapped. We can't afford another mess like Sophie. The buyer's meeting us in Denver tomorrow. If Ellie finds out, we're done. Then let's finish this tonight, Douglas growled. Get the papers. Burn the rest. No loose ends. I held my breath as they entered, their footsteps heavy on the creaking floor. They didn't notice the broken door, too focused on their task. Margaret grabbed the papers I'd left on the table, cursing when she realized some were missing. Where's the deed? She hissed. If she's been here. She hasn't, Nathan said quickly. She's clueless, Mom. I've kept her busy. But I wasn't clueless anymore. I clutched the stolen papers tighter, my mind racing. They were planning to finish something tonight, and I was the loose end. I waited until they moved to the back of the cabin, then slipped out the door, running through the snow as fast as I could. The cold burned my lungs, but I didn't stop until I reached the lodge, locking myself in our suite. I didn't have much time. I packed my bag, my hands shaking, and called Clara again. They're after me, I whispered, my voice trembling. They did something to Sophie, and I think they're planning to do it to me. Get out, Clara said, her voice urgent. Now! I'm in Denver. I'll meet you. But you need to leave before they find you. I didn't hesitate. I marched to the front desk, the same tired clerk looking up as I approached. I need to cancel all bookings under my name, I said, my voice low and firm. Rooms, rentals, the heli skiing tomorrow. Everything. He blinked, startled. Ma'am, that's the entire Pierce reservation. Are you sure? Oh, I'm sure, I replied, locking eyes with him. And book me a suite in Denver. I'm done here. By dawn, I was gone. I threw my bags into the rental jeep, the engine roaring to life as I tore down the icy road. The mountains blurred past, their white peaks indifferent to the chaos I'd left behind. I could almost hear it. Margaret's shriek piercing the lodge. The rooms are canceled! Where's the car? Douglas barking at Nathan to fix it. Nathan fumbling with his phone, dialing me over and over. I let it ring, the highway stretching out like a lifeline, pulling me toward safety. In Denver, I checked into a sleek hotel downtown, the city lights a stark contrast to the lodge's isolation. Clara met me in the lobby, her wild hair tucked under a beanie, her eyes sharp with concern. "You okay?" she asked, pulling me into a hug. "No," I admitted, handing her the papers. "They killed Sophie, or at least they made her disappear, and they were going to do the same to me." Clara's face darkened as she read through the documents. "This is worse than I thought," she said. "Sophie found out about the land deal. She was going to expose them. They must have panicked. What do I do?" I asked, my voice breaking. "They stole $50,000 from me, Clara, and now this. I can't just walk away." "You don't," she said, her jaw set. "We take them down." We spent the night planning, digging through the papers, and calling in a favor with a friend of Clara's, a private investigator named Riley, who specialized in financial crimes. Riley confirmed what we suspected. Pierce Ventures was a front, a shell company used to launder money through fraudulent land deals. The cabin property was the last piece of a puzzle they'd been building for years, and Sophie's name on the deed had been their biggest obstacle, until they removed her. The next morning, I booked a conference room at the hotel, cold, modern, all glass and steel, and sent them a curt email. "Meet me today, 10 a.m. We need to talk." I didn't sleep, but it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was resolve. I wasn't just fighting for my money anymore. I was fighting for Sophie, for myself, for every piece of me they'd tried to erase. They arrived like a blizzard of their own making. Nathan looked wrecked, his shirt wrinkled, eyes hollow. Margaret's fury radiated off her, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. Douglas's face was red as a beet, his fists clenched. Clara stood beside me, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. "What the hell is this?" Nathan demanded, gripping the edge of the table. I leaned back in my chair, calm as the eye of a storm. "A conversation. You've been so eager to talk, so let's talk." "You ungrateful little—" Margaret started, her voice a hiss, but I cut her off. "Ungrateful?" I said, my tone sharp enough to slice through her. "I paid for that trip. My money, my name. And guess what I found? You siphoned $50,000 from our account, Margaret. Family investments, right?" Douglas blustered, his voice booming. "That's nonsense." "It's not," Clara interjected, stepping forward. "I've got the receipts from Sophie's divorce. Same scam, different victim. Showed me the paperwork years ago. Thought you'd want to know, Ellie." Nathan's face drained of color, his hands dropping to his sides. "Mom, is this true? We were securing our future," Margaret snapped, her eyes flashing. "She's not family. She's a liability." I stood, my voice steady as steel, cutting through the room. "I was your daughter-in-law. 5 years, Nathan. 5 years I cooked your mother's recipes, smiled through your father's insults, poured my savings into this marriage. And you let them rob me blind and call it tradition. But that's not the worst of it, is it?" I slid the police report across the table, Sophie's name bold on the page. "You made her disappear, and you were going to do the same to me." Margaret's face went white, her composure cracking. Douglas lunged for the paper, but Clara snatched it back, her eyes blazing. "Don't even try," she said. "We've got copies. And the PI we hired? She's already talking to the cops." Nathan's voice broke, a whisper. "Ellie, I didn't know they'd go that far." "You knew enough," I said, stepping back. "I saw your signatures, Nathan. You approved the transfers. You kept me in the dark. And you let them plan to finish me at the cabin last night. Don't lie to me now." He froze, guilt washing over him like a tide. Margaret's mouth snapped shut, her defense crumbling. Douglas shifted, muttering curses under his breath, but Clara let out a low whistle. "Wow," she said, grinning. "You really stepped in it this time, Mom." I faced them all, my resolve hardening. "I've frozen the accounts, every last cent. I'm filing for divorce today. And the police? They'll be here soon. You can explain Sophie to them." Nathan lunged forward, desperate. "Ellie, please, let's fix this. I'll make them stop." "Fix it?" I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed off the glass walls. "You had 5 years to fix it, Nathan. 5 years to stand up for me, to choose me. You didn't. I'm done." I grabbed my bag and walked out, head high, their voices fading behind me. Margaret's protests, Douglas's swearing, Nathan's pleas. Clara followed, catching up as I reached the elevator. "You're a badass," she said, grinning. Should have done that years ago. Better late than never, I replied, the doors sliding shut. Months later, I was settled in my new apartment in Denver, a small place with a view of the Rockies glinting in the distance. The air felt lighter here, the city hum a welcome change from the lodge's oppressive silence. Clara dropped by one evening, a bottle of Merlot in hand and a stack of newspapers under her arm. "They're done," she said, tossing the papers on the table. "Margaret and Douglas, arrested for fraud, money laundering, and now they're looking into Sophie's disappearance. Nathan's testifying against them to save his own skin." I nodded, sipping my wine. "Good. He's still begging you to come back," she added, pouring herself a glass. "Sent me a text whining about how he's changed. He can beg all he wants," I said, clinking my glass against hers. "I'm keeping the Jeep and my freedom." We sat on the balcony, the mountains stretching out before us, their peaks catching the last light of day. My phone buzzed, a text from Nathan. "I'm sorry. They're gone from my life now. Please, Ellie, give me a chance." I stared at it, the words blurring into the past. Every shrugged excuse, every lonely meal, every dollar they'd stolen, every moment I'd spent running for my life in the snow. I deleted it, my thumb steady, and took another sip of wine. "Too late, Nathan," I whispered, the wind carrying my words away. "This table's mine now." I leaned back, the cold metal of the chair grounding me, and let the Rockies fill my vision. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anyone's approval, wasn't bending to fit their mold. I'd built this space, my space, and no one could take it away. The ice beneath the pines had cracked, and I'd walked away stronger than ever.